weathered hands steady despite the weight of the moment. Before him lay a manuscript, one that had remained untouched for centuries, now in his hands. The writing was delicate, but unmistakably ancient, the script unfamiliar, yet hauntingly clear. He traced the words with his fingers, heart racing as he pieced together the narrative hidden within the text. The manuscript spoke of the golden heart of Erebor, a relic lost to the world when Smaug's fiery wrath claimed the mountain. The text hinted at its origins, its significance, and the devastating power it held, a power that could change the fate of Erebor, and perhaps all of Middle-earth. Eledrin's mind raced with the implications. His years of study had always been rooted in the lore of the dwarves, in the lost kingdom beneath the mountain, and the artifact that had once belonged to Erebor's kings. But this was different. The golden heart wasn't just a treasure. It was tied to something far greater than anything he could have imagined, a secret buried deep within Smaug's hoard, waiting to be unearthed. He closed the manuscript, the weight of its words sinking deep into his chest. It was as if the mountain itself had called to him, urging him to seek the truth, to restore Erebor to its rightful place. But what would it cost to uncover such a legacy? Eledrin had always believed that knowledge was the key to understanding Middle-earth's true history. Yet, with this discovery, he began to question if some truths were best left buried. Sighing deeply, he set the manuscript aside, his mind filled with thoughts of Erebor. The mountain had once been the jewel of the Dwarven kingdom, a symbol of their power and pride, but now it stood as a hollowed shell, the echoes of its greatness only whispered in the wind. Smaug had destroyed it all, and for years the dwarves had been scattered, their once proud kingdom reduced to a distant memory. I have to go, Eledrin whispered to the empty room. His decision was made, though his heart weighed heavy with the uncertainty of what lay ahead. The golden heart had to be found. The truth of Erebor's legacy needed to be uncovered, even if it meant confronting the darkness that still lingered beneath the mountain. As Eledrin gathered his belongings, his mind wandered back to the past, the lost kings of Erebor, their strength and their downfall. The manuscript spoke of the Watcher of the Deep, a guardian spirit bound to the golden heart, whose power would protect the artifact from those who sought to abuse it. But that protection had failed once before. The dragon Smaug had come, and Erebor had fallen. The door creaked open, breaking his reverie. Diane, a stout and hardened dwarf, stepped into the room, his heavy boots making a soft clattering sound on the stone floor. His stern face softened as he saw Eledrin's troubled expression. I knew this day would come, Diane said, his voice low but resolute. You found it, haven't you? The golden heart. Eledrin nodded, his fingers trembling slightly as he reached for the manuscript again. Yes, the legends were true. The golden heart exists, and it lies deep within Smaug's hoard. Diane's brow furrowed, his eyes narrowing as he glanced toward the manuscript. A dangerous thing to seek, that heart. There's more to it than what we've heard. I've seen the consequences of greed before, Eledrin. Ereber's fall was no accident. Smaug didn't just destroy a kingdom. He destroyed a people's soul. Eledrin looked at him, his face full of determination. The dwarf's soul has been lost for too long. We cannot rest until we restore it. Ereber's legacy must be reclaimed. Diane stepped forward, placing a hand on Eledrin's shoulder. Then we'll go together, my friend. But mark my words, this journey will test us, and it may cost us more than we're willing to pay. Eledrin met his gaze, gratitude and apprehension mingling in his chest. He knew Diane's words were not spoken lightly. The path to Ereber was fraught with dangers, and the Golden Heart's power was not something that could be wielded carelessly. But the possibility of uncovering Ereber's lost legacy was too great to ignore. We leave at first light, Eledrin said, his voice steady. The following morning, as the first rays of dawn broke over the horizon, Eledrin and Diane set out from the small village where Eledrin had spent much of his life. The road to Ereber was long, winding through the wilds of Eriador, past ancient ruins and forgotten forests. The journey would take weeks, perhaps longer, and they would be alone in the wilderness, save for the company of Luthiel, an elf who had long been connected to Ereber's fate. Luthiel appeared at the edge of the village, just as they were about to leave. Her slender form was draped in a cloak of dark green, her long silver hair flowing like a river in the wind. She looked every bit the elf of legend, ageless and untouchable. But there was a sadness in her eyes, one that Eledrin knew well. I had a feeling you would go, Luthiel said, her voice soft but full of resolve, and that you would not go alone. Eledrin nodded. You're coming with us then. She smiled faintly. I have my own reasons for seeking the Golden Heart. Ereber is as much a part of me as it is of you. Diane raised an eyebrow. And what reasons are those, elf? Luthiel's gaze shifted to the horizon, her eyes distant. The past weighs heavily on me. Ereber's kings once forged alliances with my people, but that was before the fall. I have unfinished business with that mountain. Eledrin felt the tension in the air, the weight of unspoken histories between Luthiel and Ereber's fallen kings. But there was no time for questions now. They had a long road ahead of them. Then let us begin, Eledrin said. The path to Ereber is long, and the mountain waits for no one. As they walked, the sounds of the world filled their ears, birds calling in the distance, the rustle of leaves beneath their feet. The journey was quiet at first, each of them lost in their thoughts. But soon, the landscape began to change. The fields gave way to hills, and the air grew cooler as they climbed into the northern reaches of Eriador. As night fell, they camped near a small stream, the flickering fire casting long shadows on the ground. Eledrin stared into the flames, his thoughts consumed by the path ahead. The golden heart was so close, yet so far, and as the firelight flickered in his eyes, he felt a sense of foreboding settle over him. The mountain would not yield its secrets easily. He was not the first to seek Erebber's lost treasures, but this time, Eledrin thought, the past might reveal its deepest secrets. And what those secrets would mean for Middle-earth, he could not yet imagine. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it the scent of pine and earth. Eledrin glanced up at the sky, where the stars shone brightly, as though the night itself held its breath, waiting for the dawn. The journey to Erebber had begun, and as they ventured into the wilderness, the weight of the Golden Heart's secret pressed ever more heavily upon him. It was only a matter of time before the past would reveal itself, whether they were ready for it or not. The group continued deeper into the heart of Erebber, the echoes of their footsteps reverberating through the darkened halls like the whispers of long-dead kings. The ancient stone walls of the mountain pressed in on them, the weight of centuries bearing down upon their shoulders. Idriel felt it more keenly with every step he took, a pull that led him ever forward, deeper into the forgotten past. The deeper they ventured, the more oppressive the silence became, as though Erebber itself were holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Idriel had spent his life studying the dwarven lore, the histories of Erebber, and the legends of the kings who had ruled the lonely mountain. But this was different. The knowledge of the Golden Heart, the artifact they sought, had been whispered about for centuries, a myth buried in the ashes of Erebber's fall. And yet, here they were, standing at the very threshold of that myth, about to unearth the relic that could change the course of Middle-earth's history. Are you sure we should be going any deeper? Diane's voice broke the silence. The grizzled dwarf stood a few paces behind, his brow furrowed in concern as he scanned the shadows of the cavernous hall. The deeper we go, the more I feel like we're walking into a trap. We've come this far, Idriel said quietly, his voice barely more than a whisper. His eyes never left the path ahead, his mind filled with visions of what lay buried beneath these ancient stones. The Golden Heart is here somewhere. We're close. Luthiel, silent as always, walked beside him, her gaze distant as she studied the path they traveled. Her thoughts seemed far removed from the present, lost in some distant memory, but there was something about her, an unease that had taken root in her heart. She had known Erebber once, in its prime, before it was destroyed by Smaug's fiery wrath. She, too, had ties to this place, though they were fraught with pain and loss. What is it, Luthiel? Idriel asked, sensing her unease. She looked up at him, her silver eyes meeting his with a mixture of sorrow and resolve. We are not alone, Idriel, she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. The mountain stirs, and with it, the spirits of its past. There are things here, things that should not be disturbed. Idriel nodded, understanding the gravity of her words. Erebor was not just a kingdom of stone and treasure. It was a place of power, a place where ancient forces still lingered, hidden beneath the surface. The Golden Heart was no mere artifact. It was a key to something much greater. And as much as Idriel longed to uncover its secrets, he could not shake the feeling that there was a danger here far greater than any of them could comprehend. They reached the chamber they had been seeking, the heart of Smaug's hoard. The air in the room was thick with dust, the remnants of treasure long forgotten. Gold, jewels, and relics of great power lay scattered across the floor, untouched for centuries. And there, at the center of it all, resting on a pedestal of dark stone, was the Golden Heart. Idriel's breath caught in his throat. The artifact glowed faintly in the dim light, its surface etched with ancient runes. He felt its pull, a magnetic force that beckoned him closer, urging him to take it. His heart raced, and for a moment he was paralyzed, torn between the allure of the Golden Heart and the deep fear that churned in his stomach. You feel it too, don't you? Luthiel's voice was barely more than a whisper, but it cut through his thoughts like a blade. This is no ordinary treasure, Idriel. This is power. Power that has been locked away for a reason. He nodded slowly, his hand reaching out to the artifact. He knew she was right. The Golden Heart was no mere relic. It was tied to Erebor's fall, to Smaug's destruction, to the ancient kings who had ruled before him. And yet, there was something else, something darker. The artifact was not just a symbol of the past. It was a harbinger of the future. His fingers brushed the surface of the Golden Heart, and in that instant, the world around him shattered. Visions flooded his mind, images of Smaug's rampage, fire pouring from the dragon's maw, the screams of dwarves as their kingdom burned. The halls of Erebor, once filled with life, now lay in ruin. The golden riches that had once glittered with pride were now charred and broken. And in the center of it all, Smaug's massive form loomed, his eyes burning with rage and greed. The vision shifted, and Idriel found himself standing in the heart of Erebor, surrounded by the fallen kings of the dwarves. Their spirits seemed to swirl around him, their eyes filled with sorrow and regret. They whispered to him, their voices a cacophony in his mind. The mountain will rise again, they murmured, but only through sacrifice. The words echoed in his mind, growing louder with each passing moment. His hand clenched around the Golden Heart, and a wave of darkness surged through him. He could feel the power of the artifact coursing through his veins, urging him to claim it, to use it, to restore Erebor to its former glory, no matter the cost. But as the darkness grew, so did the weight of his decision. The power was too great, too dangerous. What if using the Golden Heart meant becoming like Smaug, driven by greed and destruction? What if he, too, would lose himself to the power of the artifact. With a sharp gasp, Idriel pulled his hand back from the golden heart. The visions faded, leaving him shaken, his heart pounding in his chest. His breath came in ragged gasps as he fought to regain control of his mind. The power of the rune stone, the pull of the golden heart, it was too much. "Are you all right?" Diane's voice was rough with concern as he stepped forward, his hand resting on Idriel's shoulder. I don't know," Idriel muttered, his voice trembling. "The visions, the voices of the kings, they want me to use it. They want Erebor to rise again." Luthiel moved closer, her eyes filled with sympathy and caution. "But at what cost, Idriel? You've seen the darkness that follows in its wake. You've seen what happened to Erebor, to the dwarves. This artifact, this power, it comes with a price." Diane gripped Idriel's arm firmly. "We can't let this consume us, lad. Erebor's glory may never return. We cannot be blinded by the past. The golden heart must not become our undoing." Idriel stared down at the artifact, his thoughts a swirling maelstrom. The golden heart lay before him, its power irresistible. But the truth was clear. Erebor's past had been forged in fire, and the present could not afford to repeat that mistake. The decision before him was both simple and impossible. Use the power of the golden heart and risk the destruction of everything, or leave it behind, knowing that the knowledge and the legacy of Erebor might remain lost forever. The choice was his, but as Idriel reached for the artifact once more, he felt something stir in the darkness, something that watched from the shadows of Erebor's past. The Watcher. "Leave it behind," the voice whispered, though it came not from the stone, but from within, "before it is too late." And so, with one last, lingering glance at the golden heart, Idriel made his decision. The past would stay buried for now, but the journey had only just begun. As they turned to leave the chamber, Idriel knew that the path ahead would be long, and the burden of the golden heart would never leave him. The mountain may rise again, but only through great sacrifice, and the price was yet to be paid. The shadows of Erebor seemed to stretch endlessly as the group descended deeper into the mountain, their footsteps echoing against the cold, unyielding stone. Each movement brought them closer to their goal, yet further from the safety of the world above. Idriel felt it with every step, a tension that grew in his chest, an unshakable sense that they were venturing into something far beyond their understanding. This was no ordinary ruin. Erebor's very heart pulsed with ancient power, and the golden heart called to them. "Stay close," Diane's voice rang out, a low murmur as he checked the rear, his hand never straying far from the hilt of his blade. His eyes darted about, ever watchful. "This place feels wrong." Idriel nodded, but his focus remained on the path ahead. He had always known the dangers of Erebor's depths, had read of the traps laid by Smaug, the ancient fire dragon who who had ravaged the kingdom, hoarding its treasure like a greedy god. But this was different. The golden heart was said to be more than just treasure. It was a relic of immense power, the heart of Erebor itself. And now, the fate of Middle-earth seemed entwined with it. As they moved further into the dark recesses of the mountain, a strange sense of foreboding settled upon the group. The temperature seemed to drop, and the air grew thick with the weight of centuries of forgotten history. The walls of Erebor felt as if they were watching, as though the mountain itself was alive, a silent observer of their every move. Luthiel, her steps silent on the stone, was deep in thought, her gaze fixed on the dark corridors that stretched ahead. This place is not just a kingdom of stone, she said softly, her voice tinged with something ancient. It is a tomb filled with the spirits of those who once ruled here. Her words hung in the air, but they seemed to sink into the depths of Idril's mind. He had always known that Erebor was more than a mere kingdom. It was a symbol of dwarven pride, a home that had once flourished before Smaug's destruction. But now, as they ventured deeper, he began to understand that Erebor was something else, a place where the past and future were inextricably tied, where the fate of the world could be decided by the relic they sought. At last, they came to the chamber, a vast hall that opened up before them like the maw of some ancient beast. The air here felt heavier, as if the very stones themselves carried the weight of time. And there, on a pedestal of blackened stone, lay the golden heart. Idril's breath caught in his throat as his eyes locked onto the artifact. It gleamed with a soft, ethereal light, casting shadows that danced upon the walls. The golden surface of the heart was etched with ancient runes, familiar to Idril's eyes, but impossible to fully comprehend. It seemed to pulse with a life of its own, as though it held within it the very soul of Erebor. Without thinking, Idril stepped forward, drawn to the artifact like a moth to a flame. His hand trembled as he reached for it, his fingers brushing against its cold surface. The moment he touched it, a surge of energy coursed through him, as though the heart had awakened after a long slumber. His vision blurred, and he was overwhelmed by a torrent of images, flashes of Smaug's rampage, the fires that consumed Erebor, the screams of dwarves as they fell beneath the dragon's wrath. The mountain itself seemed to groan in agony, and Idril felt the weight of its history pressing down on him. He saw the faces of the ancient kings of Erebor, their spirits rising from the depths, their eyes filled with sorrow and regret. They spoke in voices that echoed through the chamber, their words a warning. The heart of Erebor is not a gift, but a curse. Idril recoiled, his hand jerking away from the golden heart, as if it had burned him. His heart raced, his mind reeling with the visions that still lingered in his mind. The power of the golden heart was greater than he had ever imagined. And yet, with that power came an overwhelming weight, a weight that threatened to consume him. He looked up, his eyes meeting Diane's, who had stepped forward with a concerned expression on his face. "Idriel, are you all right?" Diane asked, his voice steady but filled with concern. Idriel shook his head, trying to shake off the lingering effects of the vision. He paused, struggling to find his voice. "The golden heart, it is not what I thought. It is far more dangerous than I realized." Luthiel stepped closer, her eyes narrowed with concern. "The mountain has spoken to you, hasn't it? Erebor does not give up its secrets easily. The heart is bound to its kings, to the very soul of the mountain, and it is not a power to be wielded lightly." Idriel's mind raced as he processed the weight of Luthiel's words. The golden heart was more than just a relic. It was tied to the very foundation of Erebor, to the spirits of its fallen kings. And in that moment, he realized the true cost of their quest. The heart could either restore Erebor to its former glory, or bring about its final destruction. "I don't know if I can control it," Idriel said, his voice hoarse. "The power is overwhelming." Diane placed a hand on his shoulder, grounding him. "We cannot let it control us, Idriel. We must take what we came for and leave. The heart belongs to Erebor, not to us." But Idriel could not shake the feeling that they were only beginning to uncover the true power of the golden heart. And as he stood there, looking at the artifact, he felt something stir in the shadows, a presence that had been watching them, waiting for them to make their move. The chamber grew colder, and the flickering light from their torches cast long, unnerving shadows on the walls. The watcher was near, its presence like a chill in the air, a warning that the deeper they ventured into Erebor, the more they risked awakening the forces that had lain dormant for centuries. "I feel it," Idriel said quietly, his voice trembling. "We're not alone." Luthiel nodded, her expression grave. "The Watcher is here, the spirit of Erebor's kings, bound to the heart. We must be careful, Idriel. The Watcher will not let us take the heart without consequence." Diane's grip tightened on his axe. "We've come too far to turn back now, but I'll be ready for whatever comes." The chamber seemed to close in around them, and Idriel could feel the Watcher's gaze upon him. The presence was almost tangible, as if the spirit itself were standing beside him, watching his every move.